Welcome to another episode of Beyond Barriers podcast with Jeff Scoop and my co-host Jen Kreis. And our special guest this episode is Sean Gillespie. Sean, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
If you could tell us a little bit about your background, I mean, I could talk about it a little bit, but if you could share who you are, where you come from, and a little bit of your story, we'd love to hear it.
I'm from Spokane, Washington. I grew up here, kind of raised in between here. Summers in Henderson, Nevada, which is right outside of Vegas. My parents split when I was pretty young. I want to say about 2 when they divorced. My mom had some drug addiction issues. My dad, he did for a while, but he got cleaned up and started working for one of the local congressmen here. I had a lot of behavioral issues because I went through some childhood abuse. I was sexually molested and raped by an Asian male when I was about 8 years old, maybe for a 2-year period. A lot of that caused a lot of behavioral issues. So I was in and out of group homes. I would run away. My dad couldn't control me, and was a kind of a disturbed youth because I didn't know how to deal with my abuse. I ended up going to state group homes and foster homes here, where I started hanging around with like local punks and stuff and running away from the group homes, and ended up going to a juvenile detention facility. And while I was there, I heard about Aryan Nations, and I'd seen skinheads and stuff. So I was kind of like, oh, I wonder what these people are like. I'm white. I like the military because they wore camo. And I thought, I was young. I thought I was like, oh, great. It's the military. Cool. And so I got out and I stole a bicycle and rode it from Spokane, Washington to the Hayden Lake compound, which is about 45 miles on a BMX. And was immediately taken in by Mike Teague and Sean Winkler and their families. And I spent about 3 months living on the compound, and went back to Spokane and just started hanging out with skinheads and becoming involved with the skinhead scene. Joined the military at 17, got discharged for being a skinhead and kind of being unrepentant about my beliefs. Shortly after my discharge, I went on a countrywide hate crime spree. Did hate crimes all the way from Las Vegas to Little Rock to Oklahoma City, and including the firebombing of a Jewish temple in Oklahoma City. And I was caught about 2 weeks later because of an FBI informant. And I was sentenced to 39 years in federal prison. And it's not a place that's pleasant. I mean, during my sentencing, the rabbi said that he wanted me kept away from white supremacists because they would applaud my crime. And they immediately put me at USP Florence in Colorado, where I'm hanging out with David Lane. And they gave me a stack of white power literature. And I'd been prospecting for the Hammerskins at the time of my offense. And so I get there and there's 3 other Hammerskins. And there's no consequences for violent behavior in federal prison as of that time period. I think the system's kind of changed. It's geared more towards rehabilitation now. It still has a long way, but back then it was just, hey, do what you want. And after several violent stabbings and incidents, because I just didn't care, I ended up going to the federal supermax in Colorado. And that's where I began to reevaluate my life. It's kind of hard to hide from yourself when you're locked down for 8.5 years in solitary confinement straight at the nation's, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, the nation's most maximum security prison. And I just began to read and educate myself. And I was looking at myself after reading some of these psychology books and realizing, like, man, my abuse has affected my relationships with the way I've interacted with people. And I just began to look at the world differently. And I started looking at my own behavior. I'm like, hey, here I am, always being the tip of the spear. Here I am, firebombing the synagogue. Nobody shows up. So all these comrades that I have, none of them showed up at my sentencing. These people don't care about me. They care about their own means. And I'd seen this with other people. And I just kind of brushed it off. Like when a member of Aryan Nations would commit a crime, Pastor Butler would try to like separate himself. But I just kind of was like realizing, you know, I stabbed a child molester 29 times. That's what got me to the Supermax. And the guy happened to also be a shark. And so he had a tattoo, and that's what brought me to my attention the first time. And I'm sitting here in the hole getting ready to go to the Supermax, and an anti-racist punk rocker with an anti-swastika tattoo came on the yard. And I sent word to one of the Hammerskins I knew, and I'm like, because by this time, actually, it was kind of weird because David Lane wrote the Hammerskin Nation and got me a full patch after I was in prison, which was like really weird because it's like we're not a prison gang, but it was kind of crazy to have, you know, we referred to him as Mr. Lane back then with reverence. Now I just call him David Lane. You know, he's. But I wrote a letter and I said, hey, are you guys going to take care of this? And they were out there too busy doing heroin and drugs. And I was like, man, everything we're supposed to be against, all these skinheads are for, you know, like I got a lot of flack because the first person I stabbed was a coyote bringing illegal immigrants over. And they were like, you can't stab him. He's a good white guy on the, you know, he's a Peckerwood. And I'm just like I thought we were skinheads, you know, and I just began to question it. And then by the time I got to the Supermax, it was like, man, I had all these thoughts and I'm just like, wow, what have I done with my life? And I began to read. One of the first books I read that really kind of made me question race was Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. When I read that, I was just like, I was blown away. I was like, holy shit, I got 40 years, like, you know, so it's like, I'm never getting out of prison either, just like him. And, you know, and it was just amazing to have so much similarity between me and him. And I liked fighting. He liked fighting. You know, he was a boxer. And I didn't think I was getting out. And I reached out to a few organizations that were anti-racist organizations. I wrote a couple organizations. I wrote the NSM. I was in contact with Cynthia Smith and of NSM. And, you know, I wrote them in 2008, 2009 and said, I'm done with the movement. And never heard anything back. Began reaching out. One of the people who actually reached out to me, and I'm still friends with to this day, is Daryl Jenkins from One People's Project. Daryl Lamont Jenkins is he's good people, and me and him had our issues because when I was a member of Aryan Nations, I sent him a picture of me with a AK-47 and said, "Come, here's my address. You know, I'm not afraid of any of you." And this is the first guy that really wanted to forgive me. And we corresponded for quite some time, and I got a lot of flack. I mean, even these prison gangs like Aryan Brotherhood, you know, they're not really racial. They're more prison racial. I think there's a difference because they're more about drugs and protection while they're in prison. And the Aryan Brotherhood, actually, their top 3 guys were Jewish. So it's actually kind of surprising, you know, but a lot of flack for these supposedly racial gangs that I'm a race traitor. I got called everything from race traitor to, excuse my words, nigger lover. There was active death threats on me. And you know, I ended up spending my the laws started changing. The courts, because of a ruling in a case called Johnson, and then later on an immigration case, DeMaya, and led into Davis, which was the criminal statute. They invalidated my count 1. So I was able to spend the last 3 years just studying in the law library. And it was right after a really low point. You know, I had 40 years. Here I am having to serve a 40-year sentence for a cause I no longer believe in. That when I was arrested, I told the FBI, I mean, I had the 302s where it was like, I will spend the rest of my life for my beliefs. When they sentenced me to 39 years, I gave a Nazi salute in the courtroom. And, you know, I was very dedicated, and having to live with that, and being at the Supermax after 8.5 years, I tried to end my life, and it was just a bad point in my life. The laws started changing. I started spending time in the law library and started getting a lot of psychological help from the prison psychologist to kind of identify where my head was. And in 2020, I was actually found innocent on my count one. The Supreme Court invalidated the residual clause of Davis, and they took 30 years off. So I went from having a 40-year sentence to overnight. The guards just showed up and said, "You have 2 hours to leave the prison." I had boots tattooed with red laces on my face. I had the Afrikaner Corps Blood and Honor 777s on my chin. Skinhead on my knuckles with swastikas and SS bolts, and you name it. And they were like, "Here's $75 and a plane ticket." No help, no psychological preparation. Because I went from like being an asshole, like I was an incorrigible prisoner. I never thought I was getting out. So I was extorting child molesters, like, because they put me on a gang dropout yard that was like 85% sex offender. And it was so hard for me because I'm just like, focus on your appeal, focus on your appeal. Your family wants you to do thing. And the entire time,
I would have heard every single one of them. Sorry. You have to edit that out. Sorry, Jeff.
I missed Larry Nassar by just a couple weeks, and I probably would have screwed off my appeal for that. I mean, I'm just, and I just didn't care. And finally, I was able to get a second chance. And I came out. Second day I was out, I started working. Second day I was out, my brother had his own business, and he got me on there, and I was doing plaster work. And, my family and me have had some tumultuous relationships. So at that point, we kind of split up for a little bit. Me and my brother, our relationship's still kind of tense. Just tried to figure out what I was going to do to my life. There was a really cool guy when I got out. I got my family crest back on the back of my head and a few tattoos I couldn't take care of because just can't afford it. But there was a really cool guy. He didn't get to finish all of my arms and stuff, but what was really cool is I get out and I'm looking for a tattoo removal because I'm like, hey, look, I need to get these tattoos off my face. And they had a guy here, they called him Laser Larry, and he worked at a tattoo parlor here. And the guy was like, I said, hey, I'm just kind of getting a price quote. And he says, well, just send me some pictures and I'll give you a quote. So I did. And he just hit me back and he's like, dude, I'm going to laser your stuff for free. And I was like, for real? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I said, like, why would you do that? And he's like, man, I was a homeless junkie that got out of prison and nobody gave a damn about me and nobody helped me. And he's like, I see you're really trying to change your life. So he's like, I'm going to do that for you. And it was kind of cool. It was just like, all right, cool. And, he got my facial tattoos gone at least, and my neck, and started fading. I mean, I got my hands covered after a while. Right now, I might actually have to laser them because I'm trying to push for a felony waiver, believe it or not, to get back in the Army if I can. It's kind of hard. They have the Lautenberg Amendment. Like, they can waive my felonies, the recruiter said, but the Lautenberg Amendment makes it so I have to have my firearm rights restored before they can allow me in. And that's probably unlikely to happen. So I'm trying to deal with that issue legally, trying to see if I can get a senator to make an amendment that veterans get a waiver for that or something. But since I've been out, I just didn't know what to do. So I was kind of back and forth between a few jobs because I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do in life. I went to prison at age 20, and it's just, I was like, man, I'm too old to be a journeyman for a lot of these things because it's just tearing my body up. And, I had a hard time in prison. I mean, I've been beat by guards with batons and, I've had a hard, it was, and I do MMA. I mean, I got out, I was old. I was 36 when I got out, but I was 37 when I fought. And I was just like, hey, you know what? I've always wanted to fight and I had plans on it. And I got out and just destroyed 2 people in my first 2 fights. And including a 20-year-old kid, which felt kind of good. I was like, I saw the guy still got it, right? but and I'm friends with every single one of them. My first opponent actually was a Hispanic gentleman named Santos Perez. And to this day, we keep in contact. He's a great kid. Got a good head on his shoulders, and he's just a good person, and his family as well. And my gym has just been amazing because coming from my background, it was about the first month I was out, I went to the gym and I still had all my tattoos. And they looked at me kind of crooked because we have Terrence McKinney, an African-American UFC fighter who's on a tear right now. He's my teammate. So it's like, we had a very diverse gym. And they took me in, and as they've got to know me, they become family. I mean, like, I would do anything for those people. And my coach, Pablo Alfonso, is a Cuban American, and his wife is a white lady. And these are people that 20 years ago I would have had nothing to do with, and now that's like my surrogate father, and so I've kind of developed since I've been there. I kind of transitioned. I got lucky. I got hired on a women's domestic violence shelter. I was kind of surprised they hired me, being a felon, but they're very open towards people changing their life and having lived experience. And I like to think I've done a good job. I've been there almost a year now. I enjoy it. I've helped a lot of people. It's been a different career path than I would have thought, and at times can be emotionally taxing to see some of the way, when you see a woman come up and she's been just beaten to where she looks like the Elephant Man, and you see women who are being raped. It's not pleasant. But I like to think I can give some type of comfort to them, and help them adjust their lives as they need it. So that's basically where I'm at now.
That's incredible, Sean. You just like knocked out most of the questions I had for you. But holy cow. It's just incredible, your entire story, and then what took place. And I just was going to ask you, not what year, but how old were you when you rode your bike out to Aryan Nations? Do you remember?
15 years old.
17?
15.
15.
And what year was that?
1999. Yeah, I made it.
I'm much older than you. I'm wondering because I hung out and stuff with a guy named Sean and a guy named Sam.
Sean was from Montana, right? One of the Montana front working class.
No, I think he was from Spokane.
My wife knows, like, my wife actually was a skinhead as well. We actually married before I went to prison, but she too has left the movement, and she just yelled his name. She's like, Sean. So, yeah, that's another aspect. When I got out, that was very helpful. I forgot to add as well. I got lucky because, I didn't expect. The last conversation I had with my wife was not a good one. I was at the Supermax. She was dating and remarrying a skinhead that after she left me while I was in prison that I introduced her to, and I got told I was going to deliver an erase trader, and it was a very hard conversation. Later on, she left the movement, and I didn't know that. And I got out and I called her about, I want to say about a week or so after I got out, and I said I found her on Facebook. So I was like, "What's Facebook?" It was all new to me, and now we got TikTok and whatever. But it's I was like, "Hey, like, do you have any of my stuff?" And we fell back in love again, and we've been together ever since. And they were on the rocks, and he was a Golden State skinhead, so that she was ready to get away from all that stuff as well, and we've created a life together. And I mean, it's a crappy 1968 double wide, but I've completely redone it with laminate floors and whatever bronze fixtures. So I got a house, and we're about to sell it, and I mean, I owe like 11 grand on it. We're about to make like an extremely good profit on it, almost 100 grand profit, and gonna get me into some land and with a house, so, and then I'll just keep moving up as I need to, because I can do the construction work myself. So
that's an amazing success story. It's just incredible, especially after all those years, Sean, in prison. So many people reoffend, or they lose hope, and they go back, or they stumble, and just seeing what you've been able to accomplish, and you and your wife together, and just moving forward, it's just so incredible and inspiring, and that's why it's such an honor to have you on. And I'm just thinking back to the 90s. I first met you at Aryan Nations. So this is where I was going with the question. You were only 17 when we met, or around that age, or what?
I was somewhere around there, yeah.
Wow.
Because I remember too, I mean, I was when I think Rick Monbaron was the staff leader at the time, because Sean was like the national youth leader at the time, and he still I tried to call when I got out. I tried to call Sean out on an MMA fight. He outweighs me about 100 pounds, but I think I used to beat up on him, so I think I could take him. But I was like, hey, you know, I was like, if you wanted to, I could set it up in the cage because you ruined a lot of my life. So, he didn't want to do it. He never, you know. But yeah, it was a different time, and you know, I still have mixed feelings because I have, like, I was filming the documentary we did for Paramount Plus, and I got to go to the old compound, and it was really weird because I have like mixed feelings because it's like so much of my life has been destroyed by what I learned up there, but I had a lot of great experiences up there. I mean, it's 25 acres to play in when you're a kid, you know, and it's just like, it's really hard. And it's like, even Pastor Butler, it's like, he was always nice to me, you know, and and he's done a lot of evil stuff, but he was really nice to me. So it's kind of hard to see that duality of like mankind, of like how we can be so terrible but do so many good things. And you know, it's just kind of weird. It's kind of like Hitler. It's like he did so many bad things, but if you see his interaction with like his dogs, it's like, here's like a guy who's a human being. It's like, how is this evil person a human being? And it's hard for people to really kind of like wrap their heads around that. I've seen, you know, and
there's a lot of psychology to unpack there. I mean, I think that's a lifelong learning type of thing. And I was going to ask you too, and I don't want to keep hammering on this issue, but I just imagine, I can't imagine even just being all those years in prison and having that amount of time. And I guess my question on that is that feeling of hopelessness, like, you know, and that you were able to do that change in prison, surrounded in that environment that you explained.
Yeah.
How difficult, like, my gosh, like for us, our process, we were on the outside. I just can't imagine how difficult that must have been in prison. If you could unpack any of that to share with the audience, some of that feeling of hopelessness and how that changed, and where, I know you explained a little bit earlier on it, but gosh, I mean, it just seems like there's so much more there.
There is. I mean, it wasn't overnight. You know, a lot of it, having like the solitary confinement at the A.D.X, it was like a double-edged sword, because like it was very hard to deal with being alone. Like, I used to actually, like, because you know, we're human beings, we like to be touched, we like, even if it's just a you know, a little bro hug or a handshake. And I didn't have that. So like, there was times when I literally would destroy myself just so the SORT team could come in and do a cell extraction and beat me up, because I needed to feel some type of human contact. And one good thing, so you had that negative aspect of it, and then the other good thing is I was able to have an incredible amount of time to study. Like, I read just like, if we would have had college courses, I would have a PhD while I was there. I mean, I watched a lot of film, was actually very helpful, because like I watched over 3,700 movies when I was in there, and a lot of them were ones that I would not have watched originally. I became a big Sidney Poitier fan, and there's a movie he has called A Patch of Blue that deals directly with racism, and it's a blind white girl who becomes a friend and kind of maybe falls in love. They don't really like push that too far because it is a 1960s movie, but they kind of do. And Shelley Winters is the racist mother. And it's just being able to see, hey man, you know, like, if we didn't have sight, like, how would we look at people around us? And then I just watched an incredible amount of movies, and it was very helpful, and along with reading, And, it was not easy. It wasn't overnight, because a lot of it had become so ingrained that I had to force myself to watch interracial couples or homosexual couples and stuff on TV. I would just watch those shows. So I was like, you know what, this isn't as bad as I'm making it out to be in my head, and the movement is made out to be. They're not affecting my life. Why can't they live their life how they want to live it? And I'm not perfect. I know it may seem like I just done everything right, but I struggle all the time. There's times that my relationship with my wife is rocky, and we go to couples counseling to fix that, just because we're not. I mean, there's a lot of damage that's been done by prison and stuff like that, and how I interact with people. And I've come a long way, but I still have a long way to go. I don't think anybody's done journeying to change themselves. I try to do my best to make every day better. And it's I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. It was a long time. And I mean, I was in for 16 years and 2 months, and out of that time I spent probably 13 plus in the hole or in solitary confinement by myself. Probably the majority of it in solitary. And that's hard to deal with. I mean, there's times when I just want to be left alone, and it's not that I'm antisocial, because I'm a very sociable person. Like, but the person I was then is not who I am now. I mean, one of my coworkers is a self-identified non-binary communist, and they are the coolest person. Like, we don't agree on much, but like, we do karaoke. Like, and it's like, we go out, and her partner or their partner and my wife, we all hang out and do karaoke. And I don't agree with her, because I'm still conservative, but I'm still working on the pronouns, because that's something that's changed since I got out of prison. And as part of my work, we deal with non-binary trans people at the shelter. So it's something I still work on. But like, we care about who each other are as people, not our political beliefs. And I don't think there's much of that discourse in America now, because it's either you're a Democrat or Republican. Like, even my family, it's like, my family's Trump supporters, and then I have one liberal Democrat, and they hate each other over their political beliefs. And it's like, what happened to just being family, and caring about each other? It's like, you can't even come together 1 or 2 holidays a year. You should just put that aside and just love each other, and that's something that was hard for me coming out in 2020, was just the political culture is different. There's a lot more sensitivity in the current generation than there was in my generation, even amongst the homeless. It's like, when I was homeless, it was like, shut up, deal with it. And it's like, now it's like, oh, we need therapy. And it's like, what? Like, dude, like, okay, and it's probably a combination of the two is probably a good thing, but I don't know. It's just been an interesting journey.
Jen, did you have any questions?
I'm really honestly not easily impressed. And your story is amazing. I'm really glad you brought him on, Jeff. So I would assume that, what year did you go into prison?
I went in 2004.
2004 to 2020. That there was, think about how much difference, and just in, like he said, the political environment, everything, it just in society in general within that time. Were you worried when you were coming out that anyone would recognize you?
No, not anything about that. Like, I think most of the movement's about talk. I mean, I don't think I've ever felt any fear of my life for leaving the movement, especially now. It's like, talking to Daryl from One People's Project, it seems like the movement's different. I mean, the fact that there's people who are like openly gay in some of the alt-rights, I'm just kind of like, like, you're in the movement, like, no, it's kind of different. And I just don't want to live my life like constantly in fear. And I don't think that I know when I got out, still having racial tattoos, I was very, because like we were in prison able to watch the news, and I'm like, oh, George Floyd, there's riots, like there's people going to come up and start stuff with me. And honestly, when I got out, I've only had one person that has like questioned me when I still had my tattoos. And it was actually, it was a white lady with dreadlocks who was at a KOA, and her husband owned the KOA. And I came in and I was going there. I was having a family thing with my brother for, I think it was 4th of July. And we went in and I was checking out at the stand, getting some supplies. And she's like, that's a pretty bold statement. And she looked at the swastika on my hand, and I'm like, oh, like finally somebody, and it took about a year. So I was kind of like, finally somebody's asking me something honest. And I explained my life and I explained my change. And it got to the point where she wanted to invite me to dinner with her husband. And so it's like being able to have that dialogue. And she's like, that is amazing that you've changed. And like, it's pretty, I kind of liked it because it gave me the opportunity to explain myself. Because I mean, I had got looks, but nobody was ever bold enough to say anything. And it kind of made me, it's like, I can see you looking, I can see you're upset. Just give me a question, like treat me like a human being. Don't look at me like, and because that's not what we do in prison. It's like, you got to promise someone like, what's going on? You got a problem? It's like, it's a different environment. It's like, oh, you do? Okay, we'll just go in the cell and we'll deal with it. And you're going to talk about it, you're going to fight about it. And so having this like society, I expected more pushback, but honestly, people have been very open, including people that I disagree with. Cause like, I don't agree with everything that Black Lives Matter movement does. It doesn't mean I don't care about Black lives, but it's just, I with some of the political leaders and stuff, and what I see as division in America, but that's my belief. I have my coworkers that I would take a bullet for, and a lot of them are on the total, like, I'm probably the only conservative at my work. I mean, I work with a bunch of really cool women, and now another man, at the shelter. And it's just, I treat them just like I would everyone else. So, they're good people.
Life sure is different than before too, not being able to see that humanity in others. And that's what I'm hearing from the story, is that having that dialogue and just that what you shared with us about the lady at the KOA. Look at the dialogue and how that, like, you were waiting for someone to say something, and then it turned into this wonderful conversation, and it opened up hearts and minds, and we do need more of that in this country. And that's one takeaway, I think, from anybody that's listening to really take to heart and have those conversations. And just as Sean said, we don't have to agree on everything. I mean, that's the problem in the country right now, is that people won't talk, they won't have those conversations. And I tell you, if someone coming from the background that you came out of, and all the trauma, Sean, and everything you went through, for you to be able to come through like that and be this success story and be so honest about it and everything, it's incredible. And I really hope a lot of people take that to heart and listen.
Well, and if you juxtapose that reaction to 20 years ago, if somebody had commented on my tattoos or my flight jacket or laces, just the way the reaction was different. And I know I've seen you talk about it on one of your podcasts of, punching somebody's not going to get them to change their mind. And It's like 20 years ago, I would have been like, you got a problem with it, and I would have said something to them. And just having that interaction where I had like a crossroads there, I could have been very defensive and caused more issues, but actually explaining myself brought it to open dialogue that led to a good, and not every dialogue is going to be a good outcome. I mean, let's be honest. You're gonna have people who just don't accept change. Like I've had pushback, like I said, at some of the local universities of students that don't want me there. I mean, the students felt unsafe, and I don't understand it because I'm talking about the same stuff that you agree with, but not having that dialogue is the same as just letting that stuff continue. And I think you have to work together, and I just hopefully there's opportunities here at some of these universities in the future where they're more open to change. I spoke at the Human Rights Education Institute in Hayden Lake, or in Coeur d'Alene rather, back in March or April, and we had a really good interaction in the community, including several people that were victims of hate crimes from Aryan Nations, an LGBT couple. There was a lesbian couple, and they were very leery about me. And at the end, we gave each other hugs. And they were victims of hate crimes by Aryan Nation members. And then they had someone who had their mailbox blown up by Aryan Nations members as well. There was some of these people that I'd heard about when I was in the movement. And it was kind of interesting being on the other side of the fence, because before I would have been out there with Sean Winkler, Mike Teague, and we would have been holding up signs. And it's kind of interesting too, like when I reached out to people, because I was kind of curious, because I'm like, man, I wonder how many people are still in the movement. And I've seen so many people have left. And I thought that was pretty cool. Mike Teague and Christian Teague, his wife, are both no longer in the movement. In fact, ironically, they have a mixed grandchild. So, and they love that grandchild. So, it's kind of interesting, because 20 years ago, that was not the people I remember. So, it's very interesting seeing how many people have just left the movement and openly left the movement. And the ones that are still there, like Sean Winkler, just doesn't surprise me, because unfortunately, like, I don't think he has more than the movement, and I think there's probably some psychological reasons for that, having interacted with him for so many years, that he's dependent. It gives him a status that he can't find with anything else, unfortunately. And as much as I have a personal beef, I would love to help them leave the movement, because I hate to see somebody wasting so much of their life. And it's kind of amazing. Like, me and my wife have talked about it, where how much time we used to just focus on hating other people. Like, get off of work, now I can just play my PlayStation 5, enjoy life, have a cuddle with my wife, instead of being, hey, we're gonna print out literature and go on a literature run tonight, and we're gonna do this and that. And it's like it's funny. Well, it's not funny, because it was one of my friends I just found out passed. She was a skinhead, but she was more into it for the music. I don't think she was like a genuine believer. She was more like an ex-punk that just kind of got into it, fell into the scene. And she had left it. And before she had passed, I just found out a couple weeks ago that she passed. We had been at a party, and people were drinking, and they had some other ones that were using, and I was going off on it. I was like, you guys are race traitors. We're in this cause. Why aren't we taking this money, instead of spending it on booze, to go get some CDs and literature and pass it out at schools? And she told me, she was like, is that all you think about is hate? And I'm just like, this is a skinhead telling me that. And it goes back to just wanting to, my own need to be the most extreme person, And I think that's what led to my crime. Because you've been in the movement. People talk about doing stuff, but not too many people actually do stuff. And I've had a crazy amount of conversations with David Lane when I was in federal prison about that same thing. I sent you guys a picture of me and David Lane. That was just one of many. And that's what I focused on. And having that time to where I'm not focused on that, it's like, it's so much less stress on me. Like, I don't even watch the news. Like, occasionally something will come across my Facebook feed that interests me or maybe like affects me locally, like serial killer stalking women or something. I'm like, holy shit, I'm hoping it's not one of my girls at work or something, at the shelter. Other than that, I don't care. Like, I don't care about the news, and I try to stay away from it. And that's probably the best advice my dad's given me. Like he stopped watching it. And, there are certain things that may come up but other than that, I just focus on my life.
Do you think now, looking back and unpacking getting involved in it, do you think that it was for a lot of people, it's like searching for this sense of belonging and community and things like that, and especially with the trauma that you had growing up, do you think that played a big part in your trajectory into the movement?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as a white kid, I didn't fit in with the Black and Hispanic gangs. Like had I had like the Serenos or somebody came up and been like, "Hey, what's up, Wedo? Come with us." Who knows? I might have had a different trajectory in life. But I didn't fit in with them because they were the kids that when I was in juvenile detention or group homes, they were the ones that bullied me. So I'm like, hey, like, why would I fit in with you? Like, I'm white. It's not that I was raised in a hateful environment. I was not raised racial at all. Like my dad was very adamantly against racism. I have a very diverse family. I have a cousin who's a doctor from Mexico. I have a cousin that's half Native American. I have an aunt that's Japanese by marriage, and I have a cousin who's gay. And to have such a diverse family and be the only Nazi, it's like, it's kind of weird because even to this day, my family doesn't invite me to family gatherings, and that's something that still hurts because it's like, hey, I've changed and I've paid my debt to society and I've never directly hurt you. Why can't you accept me for the change I am? And it's something I struggle with, I've ruined a lot of my family relationships, and it's like Christmas, I'm working, and I've tried to, and my wife's going to be volunteering at the shelter. So instead of going to family, we're going to feed some homeless women who are dealing with their own stuff, and try to give them a good Christmas. And I kind of enjoy that a lot more. Like, I don't have kids. We're working on it. We're both kind of old, so it's kind of, there's difficulties of her being 42. But we're working on it because we want to give a kid a good life. We want the kid to be raised better than we were. But I have some good friends from the gym and stuff, and I enjoy giving. I bought a bunch of presents already, and it's like I could be selfish and spend all the money on myself, but I'm really enjoying getting some of these guys, because like one of my best friends, Bryce, is a great father, great man, hard worker, but he got laid off because the company couldn't afford to keep him in this economy. And he's like, I couldn't afford Christmas, so I went out and bought him some presents. And I'm not putting my name on it. I'm not putting Santa. I'm putting Bryce. And I'm putting from Dad, because I want his kids to know that he loves them and he's a good dad, and he is a great dad. So like, it feels kind of good to do that, because I'm all excited right now. I'm like, yay.
Awesome.
So, but I enjoy this. I mean, it's just weird. Like, there's times I find myself camping and stuff like that, and it's like, really, like I can go camping in North Idaho right now. It's one of the most beautiful woods in the world, and it's just like, it's amazing, just going up there and it's weird because these are the same places I went with Aryan Nations up at Hayden Creek, but it's like I go up there with a different mentality, and I have a lot more fun. I'm not up there to fire rifles, or I'm a felon anyway, but I'm not up there to fire rifles and train for RAHOA or something like that. I'm training for, hey, I just want to go up and have fun and have a couple beers and, see if we can put our feet in the creek. It's like, it's just enjoy life. And, so.
Life is so much better without that heavy baggage of hate and racism and just that polarizing mentality, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, even if I had fought 20 years ago, like doing the MMA, it's like I would have missed out on some good friends. I mean, first of all, the first kid I fought wasn't even born. I think still old, but but say I had fought a Hispanic fighter 20 years ago, like I wouldn't have. It's like it's on YouTube. Like when I beat it, and I dominated him, and he's a good kid, and I think he's evolved as a fighter since our fight. But it's like first thing I did was get up and give him a hug. After I got off on top of him, it was just like, thank you. You gave me a fight. You gave me unfortunately, I got a little bit of addicted to fighting. I wanted one. I was like, oh, just one, and then it's like, no, I want more. And I'm kind of on a losing streak right now. But my last two fights, I cut 23 pounds in 2 days to fight for a title. On short notice, hadn't been to the gym, just got over COVID, and my brother had died. So it was like I just needed to get some emotions out, and the weight cut did not. Yeah, I think I could have done a lot better. I got in there and I felt like a 12-year-old holding a grown man. I was like, usually I like to wrestle because that's my favorite. So it's like usually I'll just pick someone up and dump them, and I got to hold them. It was like, nope, I don't have the strength. I lost 23 pounds in 2 days. And then the other one I took on an 8-hour notice fight, was winning the fight, and got caught in an arm bar and had my arm popped out. So in an arm bar, but I think me and him are going to fight again. And both of them are my great friends now, so it's kind of interesting because this last Friday or Saturday, a couple days ago, I got to go to the fights, and I saw the dude I fought, and we haven't seen each other for a while. And we were talking about the arm bar, and he's like, dude, I was so scared because you hit hard. I see you fight. And I was like, I didn't want to get hit. And the arm bar was there. And it's like, just, it's a family, just not even, and this guy doesn't even go to my gym, but it's like everybody I've competed with, they're really all about making people better. And that's why I like MMA. And I know some people may find that in rock climbing or whatever, whatever your hobby may be, but mine just happens to be MMA. And I'm getting to the point where my body's telling me, stop, you're old, but I'm starting to transition to keeping with that community. But I've done ringside commentating for the last about the last year almost. I've missed a couple of cards, but because of work and stuff, but I'm starting to enjoy that as well because it's the same thing, and I'm still get to be part of it. And, I'm knowledgeable. I think I'm actually better as an announcer than I am as a fighter, because I know the techniques, but I know sometimes it's hard when that adrenaline's going to remember everything. So
that's awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much, Jen. Unless you have any final questions, or Sean, if there's anything else you want to talk about.
I did want to say something about like my views real quick, because I think it's kind of important.
No, don't rush. You got all the time you want, Sean.
There was a time when I first got out, and this goes to having a good woman that I love. When I got out, I wasn't. I want to say it was like 2 or 3 months after I'd been out. I already had a really nice, badass Mustang. Like I was doing well, and I kind of gave up for a minute. So it's like everybody thinks life's perfect, and it took me 15 minutes, even though there's a police report from when I was a kid, to find the guy who abused me. And I was still struggling when I got out. And having such a good woman stopped me from making a mistake. And I think like this is important for like abuse survivors, is I drove all the way to the guy's house, and I had a baseball bat. I had every intention of just going after the dude. And 2 things stopped me. A, the guy who abused me had his children outside on the front yard, and I was like, I'm not going to traumatize those kids. And B, one thing that's really stuck by me in having such a great woman is Brandy was on Bluetooth and was on my car telling me, stop, turn around. He's already taken so much of your life. He's going to take me. And those words really kind of broke through the anger I had, because I was just on that like, well, I gotta, take care of this. And like I said, it was just a couple months out of prison. So I still had that 39-year mentality where I'm just like, whatever, dude, you know? And it's like, being able to have such a woman that can tell me something I don't want to hear, but being able to listen to that because I love her has made it, she's the reason I've been successful, not me. I mean, you know, having somebody, you know, they say behind every man is an even stronger woman. And I think that's so true, you know? So having Brandy with me and the love she gives me, it makes it worth it. So.
Wow, brother, man. Thanks for sharing that. That's it's heartbreaking and inspiring all at the same time, because it's
hard. And
yeah,
500, I mean, for here, that's a very expensive house, $570K in a gated community and on a lake. And he's a pharmacist and he goes to Venice, and it was hard because it's like, I thought about the times when I've been assaulted by guards, because I've assaulted a guard and they've had me 4-pointed to a bed at the Supermax for more than 24 hours and beat me with batons. And I'm just thinking like, wow, he was in Venice while I was doing that. And sometimes it's hard, but I'm like, you know what? My freedom's more important. So yeah, no, I just, you know, and then as I'm doing this, I just got a text from one of my coworkers said, "You're a good guy. Hang in there." Cause they know we've had the last couple of days have been really hard. So as it just popped up on the screen. So, you know, I got good people around me. I think that's what's important. Cause, you know, I have a friend of mine that got out of prison and he actually moved to Coeur d'Alene and started hanging out with Aryan Nations, and he went to prison for a hate crime after he got out. And you know, he's the guy who held the child molester for me when I stabbed him in prison. And he's, "Hey, you want to hang out?" And I said, "No." You know, it's like, he's a good guy. He's no longer racial, but he cannot stay out of prison. And I think you have a choice to make. Do you want to hang out with people that are going to set you back, or are you going to hang out with people who are going to bring you back to places you don't want to be? And I don't. And, you know, he respected that. I told him, I was like, "Hey, man, you know," I was like, "I don't mind being your Facebook friend. Like, you know, I'm not just shining you off." I was like, "You know, I'll definitely help you if I could find you a job or something. You want to try to get your life on trajectory and you show me a pattern, then I'm fine hanging out with you. But for now, no, I'm fine. You got to make a decision in life. Are your kids important or prison?" So I think that's the most important thing, is getting it in your head that you're going to make it. Because I'm not saying I won't ever go back to prison, because I did tell the prison counselors, I said, if someone touches my kid, like, I will do what I got to do and accept the consequences of it. Like, that's the only reason I'm coming back to prison. You know, someone touches my niece or nephews or something, but I was like, you know what? There's consequences, and I'm willing to accept those consequences, and I'll stand up in court and own them like a man. But I'm hoping and praying that does not happen, because I just want to focus on me and doing my life, you know? So
thank you so much for being on the show, Sean, and sharing everything with the audience. And you're 100% a good guy, man. That was nice to hear about that text. That's good support network around you, and it's so amazing to see you again after so many years, and that you're out and doing so well. It's freaking incredible, man. It's just awesome. Thank you again.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.